Okay, today we're learning section 9.8, the last section of chapter 9. Who's excited? Okay. All right, simple interest. Now, this chapter we've dealt a lot with formulas, right? Our proportion formula for finding percent, our percent equation. And so now, section 9.8, we're going to learn one last formula. Okay, and that is our interest formula. Simple interest formula is interest equals principal times rate times time. All right, and what that is abbreviated as is I equals PRT. I equals PRT. So the original problem on all of your homework problems tonight is going to be I equals PRT. I equals PRT. So take a minute to write that down. All right, so I've given you a sample word problem here to show you how it's going to break down, okay? Your principal amount, hear me on this, your principal amount is always the initial amount that you invest, okay? So whatever that chunk of money is that you're investing or borrowing, okay, either one, that chunk of money, that's my principal. Your rate is always going to be the percent at which it grows, and here's a key word, annually. Annually means what? Yearly. Very good. Okay, so it's not by months, it's annually. Okay, so our rate is how much it's going to grow every year, 6%. And then our time, that's going to be easy. We're going to see that in years. Now, later on in the lesson, we'll see that some problems actually give you the time in months. So you always have to put months over years in order to, since we're still finding annual interest rate, we have to figure out what part of a year that is. But we'll talk about that more in a second. All right, so this is how it plugs in. 500 plugs in for the principal. And then why did I change it to 0.06? I thought it was 6%. Why did I change it to a decimal? Justin?
So you can multiply.
So I can multiply. Anytime I multiply a percent times a number, I have to change it to a decimal. So go ahead and just automatically do that. Okay? You don't have to put the actual percentage into the equation. Just automatically change it to a percent or to a decimal. And then you multiply it by your years. So in your calculators, everybody with me, I want you to do 500 times 0.06 times 4. And what do you get?
400.
Nope. 0.06. You get $120. You see that in your calculators? $120?
Oh.
Do you see it? So what does that mean? $120. What does that mean? It means if you were to go to ViStar, everybody know ViStar, the bank? If you were to go to ViStar and you were to invest $500 into some kind of account that was to grow your money at 6% a year, after 4 years, when you go to get that money back, now your $500 has grown to how much?
620.
How'd you figure that out?
You add 120.
Okay, so over 4 years, my initial investment of $500 gained $120 in interest just for sitting there. I made $120, okay? And now I have $620. So my money grew because of the investment. And you know, at this point, you know, some of your parents might have retirement accounts. That's what they're doing. They're investing money in these accounts, and that money is growing at an interest rate, and that's an investment for them. Okay, so that's really, in a nutshell, what we're learning today. If I invest this much money, and it's growing at now. Which one would you rather have, a 2% interest rate or a 6% interest rate? 6, because the higher the interest or the higher the rate, the more interest you're going to make. Now, what if you were borrowing money though?
Lower.
You want a lower interest rate, right? Because that's less money that you've got to pay back. Okay, so it depends on which side of it you're looking at. If you're investing money, you want a higher rate. If you're borrowing money, you want a lower rate. Does that make sense? All right, so let's look at example 1. Oh, man, hold on. Okay, in example 1, I have this problem. It says Tim's parents lend him $100 so he can buy a radio-controlled airplane. They charge him 5% simple annual interest. what will be the total amount that Tim will owe his parents in 1 year? Okay, so I always start off with my interest formula, I equals PRT. What is $100? Which variable am I going to plug that in for? Justin? That's my principal amount. That's the initial amount that was borrowed. What about my rate? Do I know my rate? What's going to be my rate? 5%. And what is 5% as a decimal?
0.05.
0.05. Go ahead and just change it. Okay, so go ahead and just put it in, convert it in your head, and put it in the equation as a decimal. Okay, 5%. Did it tell me how much time? Yeah, it did.
1 year.
In 1 year. Time is 1 year. What do I not know? I don't know how much interest that actually is, right? It didn't say how much interest he paid on that. So what do I need to do? I need to multiply 100 times 0.05. What's 100 times 0.05?
5.
$5. But that's not what the question asked me. It says, how much will he owe his parents in a year? So now I take the initial amount that he borrowed, I add the amount of interest that he has to pay on that money that he borrowed, and that gives me the total amount that he owes his parents. Okay? So to find the total, I first had to find how much interest was accrued on it, and then I add it back to my principal, and I find my total amount. Example 2. Now, in example 2, here's what it says. You deposit $600 into a 6-month certificate of deposit. After 6 months, the balance is $618. Find the simple annual interest rate. Find the rate. Okay, so now, what do I always start with? I equals PRT. Now, what is my principal? What's my principal?
600.
Okay, that's my initial amount that I invested, $600. Do I know the rate?
No.
That's my R. Do I know the time?
No. Yes. No.
Yes.
But here's the thing. If I'm looking at annual interest rate and it gives me a time in months, I need to ask myself, how much of a year is 6 months?
Half.
It's half a year. So I'm essentially writing it 6 over 12, which is what as a decimal?
0.5.
0.5. Okay? So you always have to write, if it gives you time in months, you have to write it, okay, how much of a year is that? 6 months is half of a year. All right? Now, do you know the interest? Do you know how much interest he made?
Yeah.
I heard it.
618.
No.
18.
He made $18. How do you know that? How do you know that, Justin?
Because if you subtract 618 minus 600, then you get.
Okay? He had 600 that he invested. He ended up with 618. Where'd the $18 come from? That's the interest he made. That's the interest. Okay? If you start with a certain amount and you end with more or less, okay, hopefully more, then that's going to be your interest, $18. So now, community property and multiplication says I can multiply in any order. So I have the R right there in the middle, but does that matter? No. I can do 600 times 0.5. What's 600 times 0.5?
300.
300. It's half, right? Okay. So now my new equation is 18 equals 300 what? 300R. Now how do I solve for R? No. Subtract. Divide by 300. And R equals 0.06. Final answer?
No.
Is that a percentage?
Change to a percentage. Yeah.
Because I have to change to a percent. Rate is always in percent form, so that would be 6%. Okay? And that's how you would solve for rate in a given formula. Okay? Or an equation. That's how you would solve for rate. All right, now I want you to try one. Okay, if you deposit $500 into an account that earns 6% annual interest, what will the account's balance be after 10 months? Now, the only part that might trip you up is this 10 months. 10 months out of how many?
12.
10 over 12. Now, you can leave it a fraction and cross-reduce, or you can change to a decimal. If you change to a decimal, it's going to be repeating, but that's okay. Just round your interest to the nearest dollar. All right? That'll help you. So I'll give you a minute to work on this. Okay, so we start off with our I equals PRT formula. Okay, what's our principal?
500.
Okay. 500, what's our rate? 0.06, just change it. What's our time?
0.8.
Okay, it's going to be 10 over 12, which is going to be 0.833. So if you round it to the nearest dollar, you should still get the right answer. So 500 times 0.06 gives me 30. 30 times 0.833 gives me 25 bucks. How many people got the interest right? Anybody get the interest right? Did you get 25? Okay. Now, but is that what it asked me? No, it said, what is the account's balance? So now what do I need to do? Yep, add 500 plus 25, and that gives me the total balance. The initial investment plus the interest it made gives me the total balance, 525. Okay? All right, got it? Last example. Okay, last example. It says you put $750 into a certificate of deposit. It's just a type of account. Your simple annual interest rate is 4%. You receive a check for the interest at the end of each year. How long will it take to earn $150 in interest? So again, start off with your I equals PRT. But what key word here should tell you, hint, hint, you're solving for what? You're solving for time. What word gave it away? How long? I don't know the time. Okay, so interest. What's going to be my interest? What number do I plug in for interest?
750.
What is it? 150. Okay, that's the amount of interest that I'm trying to solve for. What about my principal? $750. What about my rate?
4%.
Which is what as a decimal? 0.04, and I don't know my time. Okay, so now what do I do? Now this is the easy part, okay? The hard part is plugging in the numbers where they go in the formula. Now what do I do? Yeah, you multiply 750 times 0.04. What's 750 times 0.04? 30 bucks. 30 what? 30 T. 30 T. So now how do I solve for time? Divide by what?
30.
T equals 5 what?
Years.
Are you sure? It's not months? It's not hours?
So because it says
Because it says annually, it's always in terms of years. Okay? T equals 5 years. And if you understand that, that's everything you need to know for 9.8.